1. A while back I was working in an office that allowed dogs. It was an open floor plan, and since customers never came into the office, we kept the dogs' food and water bowls right by the front door just because it was the most convenient space and no one else would see them but us who worked there. Of the 6 of us who worked in the main office area, I was the only one who didn't have a dog. No pets policy at the apartment, and always felt horribly left out. To make matters worse, across the way was a doggy daycare. One day, a very frantic woman came in, and she had an absolutely massive basset hound with her. Usually, the only people who came into the office were associates who had appointments with someone working there, but it was rare they brought their dogs. She ran up to me and said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yes, how can I help you?" "I wasn't sure if you took walk-ins, but I read online I could just drop him off. I tried to call, but no answer." I didn't know what she was talking about at that point, and I said, "Come again?" "Who did you call exactly?" Thinking if I could just saddle her off to whoever she came to see, I wouldn't have to decipher her problem. "Well, it doesn't matter now. Look, something urgent's come up, and I really need to leave him here. Here's his food he likes, and I'll be back in a few hours," and at this point I wasn't thinking of the doggy daycare. I thought maybe she was a friend of someone here. I said, "Well, alright, can I get your name, please?" And she said her name and then asked if I needed her to sign anything, and I was so confused at this point I just said, "Why would you need to sign something?" And she left almost immediately. So I took Otis, the dog, to the back and showed him to my co-workers, and no one knew the woman or dog. I was worried she wouldn't come back, but at the same time my wish for an office dog had been granted, and Otis was supremely chill. All he did all day was lie around and drool onto his own ears. I just freshened him up every now and then, took him out every couple hours, and he was happy as a clam on a big cushy dog bed we thankfully had an extra of. He just loved attention from anywhere he could get it. At the end of the day, the woman, thank God, came back. She said, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver. How was he?" And I said he was a champ, and was about to say, "But why is he here?" when she said, "That's a relief. Most kennels say he gets anxious around other dogs. I heard you operated at a much higher capacity. I was thrilled to see you had so few clients in the room at one time, so how much do I owe?" And that's when I realized she thought we were a dog daycare. Now, I probably should have corrected her, but I loved my day with the office dog, and I did want to get paid for supervising this strange dog all day. I just threw out a number that sounded fair and appropriate. "That'll be $20, I said. "Really?" And I couldn't tell if I'd overshot or undershot. But she paid me and left. My co-workers were laughing hysterically when they realized what had happened, and we thought it would just be a good story for the future. But the next week she came back. She said we were much more affordable and less overcrowded than the other place, that she was happy to use us. I was glad for the company, so I just took him. I didn't think there was any way she couldn't have at least some idea we weren't a dog daycare. The whole ordeal was so strange, I just figured, don't question a good thing. I was much younger and dumber then. Not long after this, Otis started getting dropped off 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 days a week. I was in heaven. He was such a love, and he made fast friends with the delivery guys and visitors. One day, we took our office Christmas card photo, and Otis was over that day, so we included him in a Santa hat. It was pretty great. But it turns out Otis's owner was friends with one of our clients, who I guess happened to have that card out on her table, or was kind enough to display it alongside her other holiday cards. Because one day, Otis's owner came in holding the card and walked up to me and said, "I can't believe I'm asking this, but is that my dog in this photo? This isn't a dog daycare at all. This is just an office, isn't it?" She said it with a note of surprise, as though she was looking around and putting it all together for the first time. No coincidence that this wasn't the first time she wasn't in some crazy rush either. She was like, "Then who are all these other dogs?" And I explained. I was terrified she was going to demand her money back or worse, take some sort of legal action against us for misrepresenting ourselves as a dog care business, or complain to corporate. Instead, she basically said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" And I explained we just really liked having Otis around. She stopped for a minute and seemed to be thinking and said, "Is that right?" And I said yes, and told her the story of how I was the only one in the office without a dog, so I left the company. She seemed a little flummoxed or hesitant, understandably, because the whole thing was so weird. She turned to my coworker and asked if I was telling the whole truth. I don't know why she thought my coworker, also a stranger to her, was more trustworthy than me, but hey, strange times. Coworker backed me up. So she said, "Well, I wish you'd said something sooner. Could have saved me a lot of embarrassment with my friend back there. All right, I have to get going. See you at 4. And she left Otis. I couldn't believe it. So, he can stay? Where else could I find someone to watch him one-on-one all day for $20? And off she went. Otis stayed my office dog until his family moved away. Luckily, right around the same time, I took a new job. With all this time sitting around doing nothing, thought it was as good a time as any to tell that story. We got to chat with her once it was all out in the open. She'd tell us how she'd never get tired of making jokes about it to people, like, "I've got to pick Otis up from work at around 4. And they'd all ask, "What do you mean? Is he a service dog?" And she'd say, "Nope, he's an accountant." She once went so far as to take a non-believer on the drive with her and walk him into the office, then walk out without him. She was just beside herself cracking up as she explained to us the joke she was playing. We could see her friend's puzzled and shocked reaction from the car as she emerged without him, and got a good kick out of it too. He'd never want to get up to leave, I think he just never wanted to get up, and without fail, every time she got him, she'd say, "What's the matter, buddy? Long day at the office?" and laugh hysterically. 2. Before I start, I used to work at a preschool in a church. And if you know anything about Christians, well, some of them, you can tell where this is going. I also want to say that I am also Christian myself, but I don't take my beliefs to the extreme. My personal policy is it's between you and God. I digress. I had a horrible time there. I was only there for 4 months. I ended up quitting because of my health, but this story did a part in it. I had just gotten off work, and it was still pretty early. I got off around 2:30 that afternoon and decided to run to Target. The closest store was Target and get some cat food. I was wearing my work shirt, which was the unforgettable Target red, but this had big white letters proclaiming Saint Something Catholic School. It took me a while to get the cat food because I'm not familiar with the layout of this Target. I finally get to the cat food, see the food my kitten eats, and just when I'm about to leave, I spot Karen, in all of her glory with her cart loaded with groceries. I should pass, she looked at me and grabbed my arm. Well, more like touched, but still. She looked me up and down, and I guess she failed to notice the big white letters and only saw red and said, "Can you get the dog food for me? I'm in a hurry." No, sorry, I'm in a hurry myself. I have to go get my dog from the groomers." Which is a lie, as she was getting groomed next week, but usually this works. "But I saw you get the cat food." "Yeah, I have a kitten at home, but I have to pick up my dog." "But you work here, you have food." "Look, if you read my shirt, you will see I don't work here." I show her the shirt and hope it makes a connection. Nope. "You work at a church, which means you have to help me." "Ma'am, I have to leave. I would like to go get my dog and feed my cat. Goodbye." But right before I leave, I hear her say, "I will speak to your boss about this." I leave, thinking nothing of it, though part of me was worried that she would call my boss, who we shall call Joe. She was one of those people who believed we represented the school no matter what we did off the clock. The next day, I go in at 7 as usual, but as I walk in, I hear Joe call my name. "Hey Maggie, come in for just a second." I walk in, feeling my nerves start to wake up. I know just what is about to happen. I walk in and see Karen. Now, I don't really pay attention to Karen as much as the fact of who she was. Now that I see, I know she's not a parent since the preschool is pretty small with only 20 to 30 kids. I know most of the parents' names and faces. And I know for certain that Karen was not a parent or even a grandparent that came sometimes. Maybe she was a church member, I don't know. Joe was sitting at the desk and I see Karen sitting in one of the seats. "Thank you for coming to see me, Ms. Karen. Now I understand you met Maggie last night at the store." "Yes, I did. She was rude and refused to help." Joe turned to me next. "Maggie, is this true? Did you refuse to help her?" "Joe, this happened after I got off. I had to go home, get my dog from the groomers. I hated lying to my boss." I heard Karen scoff at this. "Now, Ms. Karen, I am not responsible for my workers for what they do when they are not on campus, but we do have a motto here at Saint Something, and it's Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and have glory to your Father who is in heaven. Do you understand, Ms. Karen? We encourage our teachers and students to be the hands and feet of God. This being said, I do believe Maggie should have helped you. She does represent our school." As Joe was saying this, I was dumbfounded. How could Joe agree with this cow? Karen smiles at Joe.
Maggie, this is a warning. If I hear of anything like this again, you will be written up and let go. Do you understand?
I nod as if I was in the Twilight Zone. I kept thinking, can you really get fired for what you do off the clock? Is this even legal? Karen's smile got up with a crap-eating grin and walked out the door. I look up at Joe. Joe, were you just saying that to make her happy? Am I really in trouble?
Well, part of it, yes. I do expect the teachers to set an example for others. What you did was unlike Christ. You should have helped her.
Really?
Yes, really. Now go to your class.
And that was the end of that. I got so mad for the rest of the day I could barely stand the kids. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why I left. One of the many reasons. 3. I used to manage an indoor trampoline park. Huge main floor with trampolines and pads everywhere. Trampolines at 45-degree angles on the wall, etc. Very often, parents will bring in kids assuming we operate like a Chuck E. Cheese. That is to say, they wander in without a reservation and have no idea how dangerous this activity is. It's not just for kids, there's plenty of badass athletes that train in our facility. Anyway, it's Saturday at 1 p.m., typically our busiest time due to all the walk-ins and newbies. In walks 2 parents, middle-aged. Maybe late boomers or early Gen X. They have 2 kids, look to be twins aged 4.
Hi, 4 please.
When someone comes in and just throws a number at me, this is a clear indication that they're ignorant and or an idiot. Imagine walking into a gun shop and saying, 1 please. Anyway.
Hi, 4 please.
Have you been here before? If not, you need to fill out waivers for yourself and your kids.
Why do I need to fill this out? Can't we just pay and go out there?
Dad, who I notice looks exhausted, lets out a light sigh, like a teenager embarrassed by their parent. Yes, ma'am, this activity is inherently dangerous, and before I go into your options, I need you to read and fill out these forms. Mom and Dad proceed to fill out the forms. All this time, the kids have been quietly playing by themselves, very well behaved. They finish filling out the forms. I describe to them how our walk-in service works. There are a few options, but our primary for noobs goes as follows. They will need safety harnesses and a staffer to privately guide them for a set period of time. First come, first serve. A payment places you in line. Fairly simple, but considering how easily injuries can happen, we have to be very thorough. The description takes about 5 minutes of one-on-one time. Of course, throughout this, she doesn't seem to be paying great attention, looking around, bringing up random topics to the husband while he seems to be listening to me quite well. It's easy to tell when someone isn't paying attention, so I try to explain things a bit more, redundantly. Especially for people giving off her vibe. It's always the ones that complain about the waiver. Key takeaway. There is currently a 15-minute wait for this service. What do you expect for not having a reservation? Additionally, these walk-ins are first come, first served.
Okay, well, me and my husband are gonna go talk this over.
They walk away. Another parent and child come in having done our walk-in program before and pay, thus putting them next in line. Unfortunately, this transaction occurred with another coworker of mine, somewhat simultaneously as my interaction. I try to mediate these things. Maybe I could have given a bit of preference to the family I spoke with since they did come in first. Though that wasn't an official protocol, I try to adjust things like that behind the scenes, so things stay copacetic. Since this second group came in, the wait for anyone following would be significantly increased. Maybe you can see where this is going, I certainly do. I wait a few minutes to let the family continue talking amongst themselves. 5 minutes pass, and I go to our guest area to find them. They chilling on the couch, texting. The kids still happily playing amongst themselves. Hey guys, looks like the wait will be closer to 30 or 40 minutes. We had some walk-ins that just got paid up and placed themselves in line. I'll keep you updated with the wait time as best I can. Mom literally burst into tears. Everyone knows the term burst into tears. I thought it was just a saying. She started screaming at me.
This is absolutely ridiculous. You said the wait would be 15 minutes. I have a responsibility to entertain my children.
I casually glance over at her children, who seem to be having a blast jumping around and tickling each other, completely oblivious to the hostile situation that just unfolded. Dad stands up, looking more exhausted, tries to calm Mom with a side hug and a few pats on the back.
This is absurd. You misled me. I need to speak with your manager right now.
Still crying? Ma'am, I am the manager. Ugh, better than sex. Dad, piping up for the first time, says calmly, "Listen, is there anything you can do?" I'm afraid not. Our policies are perfectly clear. They're posted all over the walls, and I described them all to you. Like Smeagol talking to Gollum into that one puddle in the Two Towers, they left and never came back. But for real though, they left and never came back, unlike Gollum, who did come back. Forgot to mention, Mom was wearing a scrub top with Dr. last name embroidered on the chest. Vet your healthcare professionals, people. 4. So I live in a small city in California. It's mainly filled with older retired people, and there aren't any real big attractions, which would lead to people visiting our city. Which means that most people know the things around our city. All this is important, trust me. I used to volunteer at the only hospital in my city. It wasn't a really fancy hospital. The only thing going for it is that it was Catholic and had a hyperbaric chamber. So usually people would either go to our sister hospital in another city, or just go to the hospital in their city. So we don't usually get visitors, and people usually know the way around our city. Another thing to note is that our hospital was just newly renovated, so it has 2 entrances. The thing is, the new entrance is a lot easier to get to based on how our roads work. So it's more likely for people to go to the new entrance, not the old one if they didn't know their way around. Also very important. I have to go to the old entrance to clock in for my volunteer time. My bro drops me off and everything is normal except for a car parked where patients are picked up or dropped off. I didn't think much of it. I walk in and see a lady collapsed on one of our couches and moaning in pain. I start panicking. Another thing to note is that I have non-diagnosed depression and anxiety, and I'm severely empathetic to those in pain and have a lot of emotions, which is why I'm trying to be a nurse. I'm about to ask if she needs any help, but this huge man just comes up from behind me and starts yelling at me. I'm like 5'7", and he was 5'11", was much wider than me, and I have a fear of men, so my anxiety just goes off the walls at this point. He is yelling at me, asking where I've been. I'm so confused and panicking since the lady didn't look well at all. He is yelling about how there was no front desk staff. He thought I worked at the front desk. The thing is, the people who work at the front desk are volunteers as well who are in their 60s. But they don't come in on weekends. I was trying to remain calm and not have my voice shake because the man was scaring me, and I said that I could guide them to the ER, which is on the other side of the hospital. But the lady couldn't walk, so I said I would go get someone to bring a wheelchair. Here is the important part. Volunteers are instructed to never run in the hospital, as it increases anxiety among patients and visitors, and creates unnecessary danger. I was speed walking to the ER, and all I could hear is a man yelling at me to walk faster and run and things I don't remember but were antagonizing. This just made me feel worse and even more anxious. I finally got to the ER. I worked there before, so I knew my way around. The issue was that I wasn't allowed to use the wheelchairs because I wasn't an adult yet, so I had to find someone to help me. Eventually I got a nice nurse to help me. I worked with her before, so it was easier to talk with her. At this point I was breathing really heavily, and she asked if I was alright, and if I was working for the ER. I said no, and she said it would be best for me to go to the floors. Instead I went to the bathroom and just started crying, like absolute ugly crying. I was able to calm down a bit and text my brother to see if he was working. He worked in the pharmacy at the hospital. He was, so I went to the pharmacy. I wanted to talk to him about what happened. But he was so excited that he was just showing me around. I was never in the pharmacy before. Eventually, I just couldn't keep it in and just started crying. What was funny, though, was that he thought my allergies were acting up. I ended up in their break room just crying and explaining what happened while my brother consoled me. I don't hold any grudges against the man. I get that he was really upset, and our ER's placement is at the back of the hospital. But there are many signs directing people to the ER. The main lesson I want to get out there is don't yell at healthcare workers, even if they are volunteers. Doing that makes everything worse and just makes healthcare workers not want to work. I get that you are upset and scared, but that doesn't give you the right to just lash out. Most healthcare workers are just trying to help. And it may seem like the nurses aren't rushing, but things take time and they don't run because it's dangerous. 5. This all happened in 1978. and is the story of how my mean teacher learned a very hard lesson. When I was 8, I had a rather bitchy teacher. She wasn't exactly bad, but she did have a habit of talking to us kids like we're all brain damaged. I was a quiet kid, always kept to myself, and before this incident, I really had no issue with her. One day, teacher assigned a dinosaur drawing project for the class. I loved dinosaurs, so I immediately started drawing. I did a T-Rex, complete with mountains, palm trees, pterodactyls flying in the background, and was very happy with the piece. As I worked in my drawing, my teacher walked over, took one long look at my work, and then took my drawing away and loudly accused me of tracing because my drawing was too good for an 8-year-old. Note, at the time we didn't have any books or pictures of any dinosaurs, especially not a T-Rex, in the room. I, shocked of course, said I hadn't, and was honestly offended by her accusation, but she loudly called me a liar and dragged me to the principal's office. This was my teacher's first mistake. Mom was called and told by my teacher, who insisted on telling my mom herself, she needed to come to my school because I was cheating during an art project. This was my teacher's second mistake. You see, Mom was an artist, had a master's degree in it actually, along with degrees for English and literature, and had been teaching me to draw since I was old enough to hold a crayon. She knew my abilities and that I would never trace something unless it was my own work. Sometimes I did mirror pieces. When Mom got there, she calmly listened to the teacher, heard the accusation, asked the principal a couple of questions. Principal was quiet through most of it and was mostly acting like a witness/referee. Then the following conversation followed. This was a long time ago, but since Mom loved to talk about that day at parties and family gatherings, I remember it well. Did you see her do it?
No, but it had clearly been traced from a book.
From which book did it come?
What?
If she traced it, where did she trace it from? Which book?
I didn't see a book, and that doesn't mean she didn't use one.
Do you have any dinosaur books in the class?
No, I made sure to take them out. I wanted authentic work.
So how did she trace a dinosaur if there were no dinosaur books in the room?
Well, that's only one explanation.
So, you have no proof she traced, cheated, as you put it, but you still accused her.
I couldn't draw that well at her age, therefore she must be tracing. It's obvious.
My teacher's third and worst mistake? Talking down to my mom. So, because you couldn't do it at her age, nobody can, really? Mom glared at her for a moment, like she was a particularly big bug that had just splattered itself on the windshield. Then, shaking her head, calmly asked the principal for a piece of paper and a pencil, which she gave my mom. Mom gave them to me, and told me to draw a Chinese dragon, my favorite at the time. I drew them often. I drew the dragon, as all three of them watched, no pressure, right? When I finished, it was actually pretty decent. Mom picked it up and handed it to the principal, who looked at it, then me, then turned to the teacher and wordlessly handed it back to my mom. Mom took the drawing and waved it under the teacher's nose. And you call yourself a teacher? Apologize to my daughter now. Teacher's shoulders rounded, face beat red, grudgingly said, "Sorry," to me. She clearly didn't mean it. Turned and was going to leave when principal told her to wait. Principal then apologized for wasting my and my mom's time, told me to go home early, and ushered us out of her office. As we left, I heard the principal's raised voice as she yelled at my teacher. That teacher never bothered me again and was gone by next fall. I'm in my 40s now, self-employed, married with kids, went to 3 colleges and currently have 3 degrees, literature, biology, and art. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, number 18. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. And I think that lovely little story about the dog proves that, just because someone makes it into an Idiots in the Wild video, doesn't mean they're a bad person. Sometimes they're just in a hurry and a little bit oblivious. This was the first in a little while. I haven't actually streamed the recording session. I'm going to cut back a little bit on those. I'm not stopping them. I'll probably keep it to 1 recording stream per week. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with them. So maybe 2 streams max a week. We'll have a recording one. That'll happen earlier than usual, but I'm also going to look into maybe moving the weekend stream up a little bit. I think when I've been doing it, it's too late for everybody. I'll be honest with you, it's maybe a little late for me as well. Not that I want to go to bed at that time, but I do often like to snuggle in with a cup of tea and a film or a TV show or, whatever at that time. And so we'll see. We'll move things about. I do like to shake things up a little bit with the timings, and we'll see what works best. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.